I think it's Exodus, and then I had to like force myself to calm down. So like screaming in front of me.
If I'm really bored, want to hide in the corner.
As long as I'm off camera.
Yeah.
All right, hello everyone. Welcome to our 111th meeting. Yeah, we're up to 3 numbers that are all the same. Is there anyone new tonight? I see some new faces. All right, wonderful. So if you're not already in our Slack, cyberuc.slack.com is how we do all of our communications. If you have a UC email, you can get right in. If you don't, just come see me after the meeting. We do have a sign-in. We don't really use it, but you should. And if you're super interested in getting more involved with the club, we have 7 now. Because CTF's not here still. We have 7 main sections of our club that people can join and help with. Content, which is what Aaron does up in front of you every week. Finance, which is Chris Lopez, and he's currently in Indiana. Yes. Yeah. He's not here. Public affairs, which is our social media. Outreach, so we go to high schools a lot and we teach high schoolers about cyber things. Recruitment, so just getting more people on campus involved in this. And our lab, pretty much everyone is kind of informally, like in the club is part of our lab. So
That's cool.
Mainly it's Cole right now, for now. So yeah, if you're interested in getting more involved with the club, just stay around after the meeting and talk to us. Announcements. Zardis is coming next week. If you don't know who that is, you should probably come to this meeting. If you don't know what DEF CON is, you should Google that. But if you know what DEF CON CTF is, he's one of the people in Order of the Overflow, which is the group that puts on the CTF every year. He's also an insanely smart dude. He was the captain of Shellfish. I don't think he is currently.
Oh no.
I don't think so. And they built Mechafish, which was a giant AI platform, basically a whole server rack that can play CTFs more competitive than humans could. It was at DEF CON 24. If you're interested in seeing the video from that, it is online. So that's super big. He's coming to do a talk on Anger, which is an advanced binary analysis framework that very few people know how to do, and he's one of the people who made it. And then Red UC is happening the 22nd. We are hosting a CTF again this year. If you're going to participate in the CTF, or if you're going to be there at all, you should sign up now because it is pretty limited. Yeah. And if you don't have the link for that, it should already be in your email. If you have, is that only CAS people?
No, I still got one.
Okay, it went out to everyone. So check your email if you don't have it. But you do have it. So, Cliff, do you have any news?
I do have news.
All right.
Is it the coronavirus?
Coronavirus.
I'm calling it in like probably 12 months. There's going to be a new big virus, and they're going to name it Corona.
All right. So there was a kind of a neat vulnerability found in Intel processors prior to the ones released in late 2018. It's another speculative execution vulnerability. So that means you can leak data from the CPU where you shouldn't be able to leak data from. It's exploitable locally. You can access the processor's most secure area. So the demonstration was leaking AES keys, and they could specify where in the cache that they wanted to leak data from. So that was kind of neat. But
is the secure enclave part of the L1 cache?
It's a separate.
Okay.
You said 2019?
18.
I need a new processor.
Yeah, we all do. Everything's screwed. It's fine. There's I guess he owns CardPlanet. I don't think it's a .com anymore, but it was a website for selling credit card data. Super sketchy, super illegal. Now it's gone. The administrator of that and the admin and founder of Direct Connection, which is a Russian hacking forum. The guy who was doing both of those has pled guilty to to running Card Planet, which is on its own a maximum of 15 years in prison. So it's kind of neat. But he was also involved in a lot of Russian hacking groups, some of which are speculated to be state funded, and he's was part of a few teams that released tools that were sold on the darknet. That's kind of neat. And now he's going to jail for a very long time.
15 years really isn't a lot though for all of that.
Yeah, U.S. Laws are kind of.
Is he being extradited or?
No, he got
He lives
extradited. No, he got extradited to the U.S. from Israel. All right.
On that note. Alright. So tonight's meeting topic, for those who haven't been, I guess really just last week's meeting, we've been going over OWASP Top 10. For those who don't know, OWASP is the Open Web App Security Project. Every 3 or 4 years they put out a list of the worst vulnerabilities in web apps. Last week we covered SQL injection, which is number 1. It's pretty much stayed there since the first, like all of them.
Yeah.
So this week, broken auth and sensitive data exposure are 2 and 3. So they kind of go hand in hand, so I stapled them together. But without further ado, they're very straightforward. There's not a lot of explanation for them, but broken auth is just vulnerabilities in identity and access controls. I really like this meme. That one got me last night. But that's what broken auth is. So why is broken auth? So basically where this comes from, and this is just a whole list of them, we'll cover them all. Credential stuffing, brute force, weak passwords, knowledge base, plain text, multi-factor, and URL rewriting, and not validating session IDs. So I don't think I have slides for all of these, so we'll just kind of talk about them. Credential stuffing and, to me personally, brute force / automated kind of go together. So credential stuffing is, say, like Capital One had a bunch of their stuff. I don't think they had usernames and passwords though. That was just personal information. But basically, someone gets a hold of a bunch of usernames and passwords, so those are valid. They're not just guessing. So they basically just take those and through usually automated attacks, they'll just like spray a website and try to get one to log in. So brute force and automated attacks, basically if your website doesn't like enforce a delay. So if you've ever like logged into a website and you're wrong, it like makes you wait 5 seconds or something. So that's to prevent brute force, or not, well, brute force ain't automated, but that kind of keeps people from just like spamming your website with like 1,000 attempts to log in. Weak passwords, so like admin, password 1, all those good ones. Your home routers are probably still admin password. No, you were smart enough to change it. I know Cincinnati Bell, at least, their routers come with like really long ones now. I caught on to that. Knowledge-based password recovery questions. So, like, what's your mother's maiden name? What was your first pet? They're all very like easy to answer questions if you know someone or like know them well enough. But plain text and weakly hash passwords. So you'd be surprised, a lot of web apps store their passwords in plain text or like weak hashes, so MD5. There are websites where if you can dump a database, you can take password hashes and just like paste them in and it will crack it like that. It's a very weak algorithm. Multi-factor, heard about that a lot lately. So that's just like log in somewhere and they send you a text. That's a pretty good way to stop people from getting into your accounts. URL rewriting, that deals with like session IDs. So if you've ever seen, I know you can do it with session IDs, but also like a PHP web app, if you've seen like ID = 1 up in the top, that can be vulnerable to, you actually do like PHP, no. So yeah, all of these websites, can you see that? Nope, that's out. So yeah, like PHP ID = 1. So yeah, a lot of these, if they're not handling that properly on the back end, you can basically just increment that and like maybe get lucky and have another account. So that's kind of URL rewriting or session IDs. So when you authenticate with a server, they send back a cookie or something with a session ID. Sometimes they'll just send that in plain text up in the URL. So I know one of the common examples is you're, I think, like looking at a website, your session ID is in the URL, and it's like a hotel room that's a really good price. You copy and paste that, send it to a friend. It's got your session ID in it, and he has access to your account now. So that's a pretty bad one. Next slide. Cool. Okay. All right. Not invalidating session IDs. So if you've got this big long session ID and your server doesn't say, hey, this expires in 5 minutes or whatever, someone can just, if they get a hold of that, sign right back in. If you've ever gone somewhere and you've used a website and then just like on a public computer, you close the browser and then leave. Like if that session ID didn't get invalidated after like a timeout or something, then whoever like opens that browser again is just going to be right back in your account. So those are like the biggest reasons why authentication is broken. Does anyone have any questions on those? Any experience with those? Someone leave their, yeah?
Well, we're working on a website right now. We're trying to get these sessions to work, and we just noticed like the express sessions, like default library everybody uses, like you have to salt like all your sessions.
Yeah, I think we cover salting in a little bit, at least with passwords. So consequences, I like this one. The key under the mat. So basically bypass access controls. So like we talked about, it's pretty easy to get into someone's account if authentication is not working properly. There's also personal gain, so people can, where I got this list, they didn't really back it up, but apparently money laundering, social security fraud, so Capital One, we'll talk about in a minute, they had like 1 million users' data, like birth date, address, income, some socials. They bragged that it was only like 1%. That's still like 10,000 people's socials are now on the internet. So yeah, social security fraud, identity theft, and then just sensitive data. So again, like birthday, address, all this stuff, not good. So the 3 main attack methods, I've already kind of talked about brute force, where you just take a dictionary of words or random values. I have an example later. But you basically just take that and throw it at a website because you don't really know. It's kind of just guessing. And hopefully one of them works. Credential stuffing, like I said, that you know they're valid username and passwords. So who's had, was it Target? Is that usernames and passwords or was that financial information?
Probably both.
So basically you just shove known username and passwords into websites, which is not good because a lot of people use the same password like across multiple sites. So if they get one and then you use, hey, that same email on another site, then that's multiple accounts compromised. And then password spraying, again, just throwing things. They really just change like what kind of data you're sending at it, but those are the 3 main ones. So prevention, we're focusing on defense. There you go, Ethan. At the top of the list, multi-factor. So even if someone is lucky, gets your username and password, they still don't have your phone or whatever vector they use to authenticate. Which, yeah, prevents automated credential stuffing and brute force attacks. Don't use default passwords, kind of common sense. No admin, password 1. That's, yeah. If you're actually making web apps, oh yeah, so that goes with default credentials. So like if someone's entering, like signing up for an account, just have some logic on your server to be like, hey, these super simple passwords, don't allow that. That goes hand in hand with check weak passwords. NIST has, what is it? NIST, National Institute for Security? What is it?
Science and, I know Science and Technology.
Maybe. I haven't looked that up in a while. But they have an entire document that basically talks about or specifies what your passwords should be in length, complexity, stuff like that. So they kind of set the rules. So this document's a really good read to just kind of like skim over and figure out what password you should maybe be using. It's kind of long, but there's that. I thought this one was kind of cool. So basically return generic errors. So on some websites, if you try to sign in and it will pick up your username and then just be like, hey, this password's wrong, then the attacker will be like, okay, I know this email's valid in their system because they just told me the password's wrong. So that avoids enumeration by just saying, hey, you're wrong entirely. It doesn't give the attacker any information. So that was a good one. I didn't know about that, but yeah. Also, delay failed login attempts. Like I said, just give a timeout so people can't brute force. This one was really interesting. I couldn't find any examples of it. Some people said you don't really have to do this, but it's in OAuth's documentation. But after you authenticate with a server, they recommend generating a higher entropy session ID, which basically means it's bigger, longer, I think, or random, harder to guess. And then also HTTPS, so encrypt your data so people can't see it. You'll see Juice Shop in a minute is HTTP, so everything on the wire is unencrypted and you can just see everything. Sensitive data exposure. Moving on. This was the meme I liked, Chris. Apparently, like HIPAA, like their website, they have like this little decal where it's like it's HIPAA, not HIPPA. Thought that was funny. So this kind of goes hand in hand with broken auth. Basically, you're just disclosing sensitive information, so banking information, health information, social security, date of birth, and login credentials. Oh, this is a cool picture down here. So ECB, I can't remember. It's something cookbook.
Electronic code book.
Yeah, cookbook or code book.
I thought it was code book.
Code book. Okay. Basically, that will, Jake, you might be able to explain it even better. It takes chunks and encrypts them, but it doesn't eliminate patterns. So even though you're randomizing those little bit of chunks, they just took this image of Tux and encrypted it. But you can still kind of tell, like, hey, that's a penguin. So that's an example of a weak algorithm. So don't use that. But yeah, anyway. So like I said, HTTPS, you'd be surprised how many websites just transmit in HTTP. I think a lot, wasn't there like a hard date where they're gonna just stop supporting those? Firefox was like, we're not having it anymore.
Probably not.
It was, maybe. I know it freaks out, but if you've ever gone to a website and you see like, it's not a green little lock up at the top, it's basically your,
make you click to it now, it's not encrypted.
Gotcha. But yeah, basically, you're transmitting data in the clear, anyone gets a hold of those packets, you can see everything. Weak crypto, so like I mentioned, these are all weak algorithms that you should not use. DES was like the first, what is it? What does it stand for, DES?
That encryption standard?
Yes. That was replaced with AES, but don't use weak crypto.
Looks like Mozilla is going to start only giving new features to HTTPS sites and starting to remove features slowly from HTTP sites unless if it has anything to do with accounts. If it's just static sites, Mozilla will still allow HTTP.
Interesting. Huh. Also, improper key management. So if you've got default keys or weak keys, that's not good because a weak key can be broken. And then default keys, again, it's default. It's probably somewhere else out on the internet. Not enforcing encryption. So again, if your browser is like, yep, HTTP is fine, or your server says HTTP is fine. So some browsers will try to connect to servers over HTTP, and If it's like a banking website and they don't enforce encryption, then you're just sending your data out there in the open. And then not validating certs. I think this is client side. So if you go to a website and it's not the real website and you're not validating that cert, which basically certificate says like, hey, this is the valid server, then who knows what you're connecting to? And again, you could just be sending information to some other server. So consequences, I kind of touched on this with Capital One. We'll talk about it a little bit more, but obviously financial gain, so social security numbers, all of that, you can kind of start new lines of credit and get a lot of money from that. Brand loss, so Capital One, I thought this was interesting. I didn't think of this, but if you want to bring down a company, how about you compromise 1 million of their customers' data? Kind of says, okay, Capital One was dumb. I'm not going to bank with them anymore. So that's a big consequence. I think Target is still dealing with that. But yeah, so identity theft, same with Capital One. So 10,000 socials, names, addresses, zip codes, postal codes, phone numbers, all that jazz. I think I was one of those, but I think luckily I was not the social one. So prevention. This one was really interesting to kind of think, okay, what is sensitive data? So if you don't know what you're trying to protect, then you're probably not going to protect what needs to be protected, and then maybe overprotect something that's doesn't need to be protected. HTTPS, don't need it, delete it. So if you have someone's information and you don't need it in your server, just delete it because it can't be stolen if it's gone. If you're storing data, server side, encrypt it while it's on disk. Again, if you're encrypting it, use strong encryption algorithms. So AES and ECC, those are 2 strong algorithms. Salt your hashes, like you mentioned, salting session IDs, and then independently verify configs. So if you've got like an Apache web server and you just rip down someone's config, you have no idea if it's secure or not. So you should probably do a little bit of testing just to see like, hey, this is a valid config and I'm not leaking information or whatever. I think that's that. Oh, and then salt. So for those who don't know what salting is, basically, I'm gonna chop out some of that. So take your username, and then salts are usually just like a random number that they'll staple together with your password and then hash that. So it's a little bit harder to guess, but that's salting in a nutshell. Yes.
And that salt is also stored with that hash value, which is important.
Yes, because if you lose the random number, then that defeats the purpose.
Problem there.
Isn't it point just to make it so the same password, if leaked, doesn't leak all the passwords?
It's more so you can't run like rainbow table attacks.
Like if they crack one person's password, they can't. Oh, right, the rainbow.
So yeah, so like you could basically take a password list, and if you know that they're storing at SHA-1 or something, then you could just pre-compute this entire password list and then just cross-check all of the hash passwords with the passwords that are in that database. But if you have the salts here, you have to compute each hash individually, because you get the password and then you've got this random salt, so you can't just do big rainbow table kind of stuff. That's my understanding.
Jake really likes crypto, for those who are also interested in crypto. But yeah, so if you guys want to, yes, sorry.
That was sort of my question, is the hash is repeatable, right? So if you encrypt if you hash the same thing, it'll give you the same output.
Yes, sorry, does anyone not know what hashing is?
It's like a one-way deterministic function.
Yeah, so basically any length of input, you run it through this hash function and it outputs the same exact size for everything. So SHA-256 is a 256-bit hash. So basically if you put it in once and hash it, it's going to come out the same every time. If you change a good hash function, if you change even like 1 bit, all the bits on the outside, there's like a 50-50 chance of every single one of them changing. So that would be like the ideal hash.
They're also not reversible. So like I can't take the hash and then produce the password plus. You shouldn't be able to produce the password plus the hash or some other value that gets hashed to that hash. Because if you can somehow flip it, then you can just put in some it looks like random text, but it still hashes to
Yeah, so
thing.
it's called a collision. So 256 bits, that's 2 to the 56, which is still a really, really big number, but again, there's only that many. So if you get lucky, you can have a collision and it could be not your password and it just so happens to have that same hash. But that's really that. You guys ready to get off your laptops? So this is going to be pretty informal, just kind of playing around with JuiceShop to see what we can find. I have a couple examples, but other than that, that's really sources. So we'll play with JuiceShop for a little bit.
Oh, I know, I saw that.
Hey Chad, can you read that font?
I know, you should see his lock screen. Lock your screen real quick.
Is it because it's a 4K display?
It's like this big as the screen.
That kills my battery.
Does the socks up?
Yeah, no shit. Your laptop's on fire, Chris. What else would it kill? I vote. No reason.
Is everyone able to participate that wants to participate? Yeah.
Do we just need a Kali VM? Oh, yeah. So.
Really, all you need is like Wireshark and Burp Suite. I guess maybe Foxy Proxy for like Firefox. It just lets you easily switch your proxy. So we're gonna be going through Burp Suite. Have you used Burp Suite before?
No, I haven't played with it. I think I opened it up once. I'm like, I have no idea how to use it.
Yeah.
So
For the longest time, I saw the logo and I was like, oh, that looks interesting. But I finally started using it. It's really interesting. But I only have the community edition, which was like really stripped down. But yeah, basically that has a proxy feature, which JuiceShop is HTTP, so it doesn't really matter, but you can generate certs and like shove HTTPS through it and like see all the data coming through.
Okay, so it's like encrypted from like let's say Foxy Proxy, and then as soon as it hits Burp Suite, decrypts and then re-encrypted, kind of thing.
Yeah, I use Burp Suite for Codebreaker. You could basically point you can point the Android phone. It's really janky and I can only ever get like one packet to come through. But basically you can point the phone at Burp Suite and then you could see those authentication requests coming through.
Why don't you just use like Wireshark too?
Because it's HTTPS. So
Burp Suite can,
Burp Suite will generate certs, and then in Codebreaker's case, you would put those certs on the phone. So the phone doesn't know any different. It just says, okay, I'm sending all my data to this proxy, and then I'm sending it encrypted, but I'm using their certs and everything, and all their keys.
I wonder, like in a case where you really want stuff to be encrypted, can't you do your own cert management in an app?
I think so. I've never really messed with certs that much, but.
I would think they would do that to try to prevent MIT-M stuff.
Yeah.
I think MIT-M, like the package, will also do like rewriting service for you. I think that's also a feature, but it's not janky, it's just hard to use because it's all from TRM.
And yet, I played.
Is everyone on JuiceShop and ready to rock and roll? All right.
Because this is all I do at work. I'm on almost level 3000. It's real. It's real.
Does AWS bill by network traffic?
I think so.
Okay.
Depends, but usually it's like
network traffic and.
Just gonna say, like, not everyone at once flood this EC2 instance.
It's more just how much data you put on the thing.
Okay, cool.
Are you paying for this?
It's like,
I think I left.
Just use your GitHub account, you can get $100.
I did. I'm still waiting on them to like.
I swear, they take forever.
I left a CTF up once for a high school for a month. It took like $5.
I haven't played with it enough, and like I've been doing it myself, and I'm at like $1, but I wasn't sure if everyone starts like flooding it.
If you're crunching a bunch of shit, or you're like running a big event. I think a total AWS bill for RevUC is like $7.
Do you mean, hey Aaron, do you mean to deploy your software on my VPSs because it's constant? That's great.
It's cool. Thank you. I mean, once I get like the GitHub $100 credit or whatever, it's so cheap that that'll probably last forever.
That's my favorite.
I'm gonna use it for glacial storage because I got like the stuff to put in there.
Have you seen the, what is this? The Snowball is the little one, right? And then what's the big one?
Makes me want to scream at my face.
That's a
Snowmobile is the huge one.
Snowmobile?
Only has like one temperature.
It's for,
Like indestructible data transport?
yeah, it's, so, if you look at Snowmobile, that
The
thing.
AWS Snowball?
So you actually just send that into them?
Yeah, so that's for,
It's basically like a giant rate.
yeah, basically it's for like when you can't put stuff over the wire, it's like super.
You can't what? Oh, okay.
Like the label sensitive.
Yeah, so if you really got the big bucks, you can rent out this giant trailer that's, like, I think they blew up a bomb next to it or something.
Yeah,
Hold on.
it doesn't destroy it all. It's
What does Amazon do all this stuff? Gee.
I mean, people need to
Really? Yeah, it's
transport their data, I guess. I'm gonna mute this, just.
Oh, that's bad.
Okay, yeah, so that's the Snowball, and they blew up a bomb next to it, and it still was fine.
What is
It's for, so it's like 8 to 1 of AWS. It's like,
I wonder how secure it is against like DNS.
literally.
Yep.
Like,
I have no idea.
I wonder how they, maybe, I bet they have it in like, like a type.
no joke.
No, like, you know, they feel like grids and then talk sheets.
Faraday cage?
Yeah, I think it might be. Because
Yeah, they kind of show it. Like, that's exposed electronics. Alright. So, I mean, unless there's another thing that, like, wraps around that, it's probably susceptible to EMP attacks, but that's above me. That's hardware land.
When I saw that semi, I'm just getting flashbacks fast and furious. That's why.
What? I haven't watched those.
In the first one, they there's a semi that's taking a bunch of TVs that, you know, old like CRTs with VHSs that are worth a lot of money back.
Yeah.
Then it's a whole truck full of them, and it's a heist to get it to use as a truck.
That's fine.
I just want to know. I don't know.
Alright. Is everyone able to access Juice Shop and have Burp Suite, Wireshark, all that stuff?
Wait, tell me when I'm 100% maybe there. It's like you're like, should we call an ambulance? Wait a minute. Then you tell me the secret.
Chris,
Like me trying to fight a
should I let them play and then go over stuff, or should I just go over stuff? If you guys want to just watch me, I'm gonna kind of walk through some of the stuff that I've found. Feel free if you want to follow along and or do it yourself and just ignore me, be my guest. But this is Juice Shop. For those who don't know, OWASP makes this extremely vulnerable web app that basically you can make a CTF out of it actually, but that's a fun time. So you basically just like buy fruit related things.
No, like.
Yes.
Nom.
So here, let's do this. I have. Where in my terminal?
It's very bad today. Like I looked at it a couple times and I'm like, uh-oh.
Can you see that?
It's so bad.
Readable?
Last haircut I got was
Okay.
just, like, bad.
So I know we wanted to cover Kali tools, but I tried and tried and tried, and I could not get Hydra or Potater. It looks like it's potato. So Kali has these two tools that let you brute force websites, and basically you can just give them like the URL with like the specific fields that you want to attack, and then a list of passwords and a list of emails, and it'll basically just make every combination and throw it at a server and see what happens. Unfortunately, Juice Shop uses a REST API that expects JSON in the body of the request, and I for the life of me, I couldn't get that to work. So I wrote my own in Python, but it's very straightforward. I'll show you how to get this stuff because that's tricky sometimes. But I basically have an email file and a password file. Pull those in, and then just for every email and every password, just throw it at Juice Shop. So the data, like I said, expects this JSON like email password format, and then if we get a hit, then it'll just print it out. But let's give this a shot just to see. I can't remember. So if you used a Kali tool, this is pretty much kind of what it would look like. IP. When you use EC2 instances, the IP changes all the time, so that's why we have to include it.
Let's use a sticky IP, elastic IP.
Oh, I've never done that before.
You give me an elastic IP, and they give you one for free. But they charge you to not use it.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's disconnected, it's chilling. Yeah, if you're not getting charged, it'll charge you more than, it's actually more than like a single machine cost, just to have running. Single EC2 machine? Yeah, if you have an EC2 machine, like running and doing cool things, then it's usually cheaper.
Actually,
than just having a landscape.
okay, if you trust me, I have two files. One's email text, one's passwords.txt. They've just got random emails, random.
I don't trust you guys.
So you read that. I fortunately know the domain for Juice Shop's like emails. Then passwords. So this is kind of what I was talking about. This would just be like a word list of like super random text. Yeah, those are photos. But Kali by default actually has a bunch of these. I think the command is where is word list or just word list, and it'll like. Is that?
It has its own package that just steals word lists from other packages.
Yeah.
And the only actually unique word list in there is Rocky.
Interesting.
But I think that they're all just like hard links in user share.
Gotcha. But yeah, so Kali has a ton of these that you can use. You don't have to generate your own. I think that's actually where I got this very, very short list. But jumping back to our little fuzzer, we go ahead and run this. You're going to see it just floods Juice Shop with all of these username and password combinations. And then when it finishes, I didn't have it break when it succeeds, but we can see if it got any of them.
I saw one yesterday.
So where'd you get the email and password file?
I just made them.
What do you mean made them? Like, did you
I went to like mostcommonbabynames.com and like copied first names and added email handles, and then I think I just took a very condensed like word list and just made my own because I didn't want to flood the.
There are lists of like super common English words and super common passwords that people use. Those are available online, usually like in the millions increments. So there's a GitHub project called SecureList, I think. Let me find it.
Can you actually buy stuff through the Juice Shop program? That'd be really neat.
No, I don't think so.
'Cause there's, like,
You
a
might
little-
be able to on like actual OWASP's website, but
Juice shop CTF. Looks pretty cool.
in their documentation they like explicitly say not to put credit card information through here. So yeah. But we can scroll through here, and because I'm sneaky, you can see that I put one of the right passwords in here, but now we know, hey, we just threw all these passwords and usernames at Juice Shop, and one of them came back admin, and the password was admin123. So that's kind of what using Hydra or Potater. I need to look that up. I think it's Potater.
You gotta say it with a southern accent.
Potater. I think it's Potater.
P-A-T-A-T-O-R.
Potater.
Is it go through Tor?
Huh?
Does it go through Tor or something?
I have no idea. Yeah, Potater does a lot of different logins. So yeah, there's Potater, and then there's also Hydra, which Hydra actually has a pretty good UI, or it's THC Hydro.
Love that stuff.
But yeah, these are very well documented tools. I just unfortunately couldn't get them to work with Juice Shop, and I couldn't find any other web apps that I felt comfortable throwing stuff at.
There's a couple web apps I wrote like a couple years ago that are garbage. I should bring those up.
Yeah, let's see how bad those are.
You guys know THC Hydro was made in 2001?
Jesus Christ.
Wow. I mean, it's pretty simple and straightforward. Okay. Oh. I think it's running in CTF mode, so like if anyone gets a challenge, it'll probably pop up on all of yours. It's a weird Juice Shop-ism that if you want to deploy a CTF, you have to deploy like one instance per team. We learned that the hard way in Franco's class. Okay, so let's do Burp Suite. Did everyone install Foxy Proxy in Firefox? I failed to mention that, but it's a quick plugin. I think you can just Google like Foxy Proxy. Uh-oh. Come back.
Did you turn it off here?
No?
Looks like they turned it off. The lights are off.
No, they're on.
Oh, it's just about.
They're good.
So much creamer in that to make it feel
It probably hit like 55 minutes. Hello?
What happens if we forget?
I just want HTML. Can you guys still see me on there? JT?
No.
It's a shame.
Is that still streaming or not?
I think.
It is. Well, we just can't see his computer though.
Got your passwords.
What?
Are they on the password list that you showed us earlier?
You got me. It's 0000000.
007.
All right, I'm gonna end this and try again. All right, it said 2 to 5 minutes to cool down, so
What's 2 to 5 minutes?
projectors.
Two.
Yeah. So when those come back on, eventually, we can resume.
What if you do like one of the
So it ended tonight, Aaron?
What?
So it ended, you can like pick up next week with this, or actually, Bryce will not be here.
Yeah. I mean, I can blow through a demo really quickly.
We can do this the week after. If you wanna like finish. We can do it now if you want.
Me too.
Does anybody want me to like continue this another week, or are you dying to see stuff tonight?
Let's take a poll. If you want to see this in 2 weeks, the week after Yardis, hold up your hand. Zardis. His name is Jan, right? Yeah. And if you want to continue right now.
Okay.
So we're gonna do this when Zardis, the week after Zardis. So please come back next week. It'll be very, very neat. So, yeah.
Is Franco gonna be here next week? I bet he will.
Probably.
All right, sign off, Aaron.
So
Say
will
goodbye.
But